Hello again, and welcome to CBA's weekly blog. And I'd like to welcome back our NFP legal expert, Joanne O'Brien. Welcome,
Hi,
Joanne.
Patrick.
Joanne's a partner with CRH Law and worked with us for many years. And over the next 4 weeks, Joanne and I are going to be talking about some really important things for aged care providers in the aged care sector, particularly around good governance and leadership, and particularly in the light of the recent completion of the Royal Commission into aged care health and safety and some of the findings from that Royal Commission. So, Joanne, let's kick off with, well, what are some of those sort of big systemic issues that have come out of that Royal Commission that we maybe kick along some of the challenges that are facing some boards of aged care organisations currently?
Yeah, look, Patrick, as everybody probably knows, there were lots of systemic issues, and the final report is certainly, huge. But what I'm particularly interested in is, let's not wait. We can't wait to see what the government's going to do about it, because there's the risk that not much will happen. But what can we learn from what the Royal Commission found, and how can we use those findings to actually improve processes within individual providers? And I'm particularly interested, as you know, in the governance and leadership qualities of aged care providers and how these sorts of issues impact on boards. So, two of the systemic issues that the Royal Commission identified were one at the macro level, where they acknowledged, or I guess just confirmed what most of us already know, is that there's been this lack of leadership on the part of government. Successful governments over the last decade or so have just kicked the can down the road.
Yep.
Not really taken the bull by the horns and actually done something to improve the system or respond to those many reports they have had. But at an individual provider level, which is where we can perhaps make some difference, it was the variability in governance and behaviour that they identified.
Yeah.
And just, I think it's an interesting quote from the report that the values and behaviour of people in senior positions have a significant impact on workplace culture and then for the quality of care that's delivered. And so if the values and behaviours of the leaders are poor, then so is the care that people receive. And I think that's a key message.
The old adage, the fish rots from the head.
It is the old adage.
I know it's old, but I've heard it many times, but it's so true even today. And that's a good reminder, isn't it, of the importance of setting culture as a leadership responsibility of boards.
Yeah.
So what are some of the regulatory steps that have already been in place leading up to this that we can really learn from over the particularly last 2 years? It's been quite an active period, hasn't it, in this space?
It has, and there's been an increasing regulatory focus on governance and on the boards and the leaders of aged care providers. And I think it's possible that the Royal Commission's report will be another springboard for even greater attention in this area.
Yeah.
But the biggest step forward came in July 2019 with the new aged care quality standards.
Correct.
And specifically Standard 8 around organisational governance, which is essentially the regulatory mechanism for holding the governing body, that is generally speaking the board of an aged care provider, responsible for the day-to-day delivery of care. So even though you sit up here and your role might largely be around strategy, etc., Standard 8 is the one that says that you can't sit above what happens day to day in your facility or in your home care service.
And it's what governments have been saying for a long time. They want this line of sight, don't they, to what the consumer, the resident, their families are experiencing in terms of quality care.
Yeah. So what it means is that boards need to be able to demonstrate that they promote a culture within their organisation of safe, inclusive and quality care, and that the board is ultimately responsible for that. So to do that, they have to have organisation-wide governance systems, risk management systems, clinical governance systems.
Yeah.
Then, that was 2019. Then we all know what happened in 2020 with the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah.
And initially, of course, we also this rallying around aged care because they had the most vulnerable cohort of our community, and there was a lot of support. But of course, as infection rates started to rise and deaths started to occur, particularly down in Victoria, that's when you started to see the rhetoric change. And there, it was disappointing in many ways that there was a lot of public rhetoric from our political leaders that sheeted at home to the directors and the senior executives of aged care providers for failing to be properly prepared, failing to have proper resources. And then they ran, this line about, government-run facilities potentially being better than private. And private, they lumped in not-for-profit as well as for-profit. So it was a real focus on governance and leadership. And, that feeds into, I guess, we've got this regulatory framework, and then we've got the community expectations, which also came out in the Royal Commission. And then, of course, this year we've had the Serious Incident Response Scheme introduced in April of this year. And that one is about having effective management frameworks and complaint mechanism frameworks. And it really links back to standard 8, where there's a requirement for the board to ensure that there are organisational governance frameworks around those types of issues.
I want to delve into each of those in our blogs in the coming weeks, Joanne, as well, because there's some really important messages from that. But just generally today, from what's happened in terms of the completion of the Royal Commission, what are some of the key takeaways you think for boards and directors?
Look, I think it all comes back to corporate governance, Patrick. And, we've talked about that a lot, and there's been a lot written, of course, on corporate governance, but you can never take your eye off the ball when it comes to governance. You have to set a high standard, and you have to maintain that high standard. And I think this notion of strong and authentic leadership, you have to have leaders in your organisation who are genuinely committed to quality, inclusive and safe care. And then that leadership also has to foster this organisational culture. And again, hard thing to describe culture, but you certainly know when it's wrong. And really it's that culture that supports the quality and safe care, and a culture that also gives older people a voice, that listens to their needs and is responsive to what they're saying they need.
Joanne, thank you. Some important messages for our boards and directors. So if you'd like to know more about how Joanne can assist your organisation, please contact us at CBA. Until next week, bye for now.